Welcome back, everybody. It's Thursday night. The week's almost over. We're getting ready for the weekend. And what better way to get ready for the weekend? Mock draft. Let's do some mocking, if you will. We probably will mock each other a little bit, as well as we'll do a Dynasty SuperFlex rookie mock. We're going to have some fun tonight. It's going to be what everybody likes to talk about this time of year, mock drafts, but we're also going to sprinkle in a little IDP love for our IDP brethren who I know are patiently waiting and watching the show. We're going to have some fun with this, and we're going to just kind of see where it goes, see where the conversation takes us. We also want to talk about the Wentz trade because I know everybody in fantasy is very excited about it. Potentially, we'll see. But first and foremost, Paul, brother, it's good to see you. How you doing, man?
It's almost Friday this week. Uh, yeah, work this week was a lot of fun. I'm glad the week's over. We got some stuff on the weekend with Craig and some other friends, but yeah, how are you?
It's definitely been a week. Where I'm at in the greater Fort Wayne, Indiana area, we've been pounded with snow all week. So my kids have been home. So you and Craig have been hearing all about my journey down the mouth of madness, trying to teach a kindergartner and a third grader, all while doing my project manager job and RotoHeat. It's been a week. I'm definitely ready for the weekend, just to get a little break and wind down. And I got to fire up some film. I've got a solid weekend of defensive linemen I want to dig into a little bit more, which is riveting film. In this class, it's actually more of a horror movie than riveting, but we'll see. Uh,
Horror movies are fun.
not this horror movie. This horror movie is not as fun as it would lead on to be. Welcome to everybody that's over on YouTube watching already. I see Craig and Jason and Connor. Welcome, brother. And our boy Bryce, who I did not realize it was our Bryce that joined your XFL league. As I started to put the pieces together, I'm like, wait a minute, that's our boy Bryce. Uh,
hmm He'd been asking me, and I'm like, no, it's just unsure if we're gonna have the new leagues, what their formats are, and you shoot him a message. He's like, "What the heck is this?" I'm like, "Yeah, you want this roster?" Yeah, yeah,
I've got a dumpster fire. Are you interested in it? Hey, join the party, Bryce.
yeah.
Your roster isn't nearly as bad as the thing I took over. So it it was
Correct.
Detroit Lions 2020 season bad. So it was brutal. Uh,
Hey, it's better than the 0-16.
I don't know how the 2020
That was
Lions
not
did
me.
not go 0-16. This was a bad team. That defense was not stopping anything. So, needless to say, I'm glad it's over. That being said, if you guys are watching and you haven't already done the usual things, if you've watched our videos here on RotoHeat, I always ask for the same things: like, subscribe, hit the notification icon, do all those things. We do appreciate it. If you could share this content with everybody you know, that would be great too. RotoHeat can't become worldwide if the world doesn't know about it, and we need you to help. So thank you guys as always. Now we're going to get to it. So Carson Wentz obviously was moved for a bag of balls. I mean, when compared to the Matthew Stafford trade, I'm really surprised on how much they didn't get in return for a quarterback who was in the conversation for MVP. What, 3 years ago? I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. Made it to playoffs, was potentially a Super Bowl run until he got hurt. I mean, this isn't like a nobody quarterback, but he's traded for a third rounder this year and a second that could potentially be a first if he's on the field for 75% of the snaps. And Philly's going to eat, somewhere around 34 to 35 million in dead cap off this deal as well. So Colts get a $22 million starting quarterback for the next 3 seasons, and Philly gets some picks. How do you feel about that, Paul?
From a Philly perspective, they kind of showed their hand early, and unfortunately, you lose leverage on it. Um, from a Indianapolis perspective, they probably overpaid just off the fact that Philly was showing half their hand already. But I get how they were at least saying, hey, it's a second and third, and they can become firsts if if this happens, okay, fine, I get it. Because if those things happen, they're not going to be high first. If that's what they figured it out, that Philly eats so much of the salaries, I think I would have held my firsts and I would have held firm. But if the, I actually want to see the salary from Indy's perspective before I judge, but and that's going to be something that I don't think you're going to find for a minute here. But okay, I get it. It gives Wentz life, but Philly, they played their hand. They knew this was going to happen.
Well, and the nice thing is that Wentz is back with Reich, who helped him see his most successful ball. So from a fantasy perspective, I'm cautiously optimistic. Now I don't own any Wentz shares anymore, but if I did have a Wentz share, I'd be at least intrigued. I think he can get back to a respectable fantasy production level in this offense with this offensive line, with these skill position players. They've got a run game. He's got tight ends. He's got receivers. Obviously, T.Y. Hilton's getting a little up there in age, but everything's set up for Wentz to be successful. In a weak division, Houston's completely exploding. Jacksonville's rebuilding. Tennessee's the only real competition. I think Wentz's fantasy value is probably as high as it's been in 2 years, maybe. At least at this point. I mean, if you're not a Wentz believer, now is the time to sell, sell, sell. If you are a Wentz believer, I think you should stay a believer because this should help him. That Eagles team has been, I mean, like you said pre-show, opt-outs, injuries, and age really set Philly on fire last year, and it's hard to really put the blame on anybody.
Yeah, I mean Johnson's what top 10 tackle in the league. Dillard, he hasn't shown anything, but they drafted him in the first. Brooks is probably, I mean, top 5 guard in the league. Yeah, that's gonna hurt.
Right.
I mean, say what you want, but I mean, I said this in the chat before. I'm not gonna hold LSU 2020 over Ed Ogeron. I'm not gonna hold a college line over the Eagles' skill positions. I'm just not. I
Right.
mean, we'll see who was smart, who wasn't. A lot, you don't know if these particular snaps they called it like this. Wentz switched it over to here, and something happened. There's just a lot of info that you don't know on a lot of these, and when you've seen the heights of him, but you also see he gets nervous when the pockets open. Also, I don't know. I just want to remove one of the elements and see what happens, and that's what happens. We'll get to see it play its way out.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to give 2020 mulligans all over the place to a lot of these teams where opt-outs and injuries and age really hit them, and Eagles are one of them. If you're so, what is your value on Wentz? So Bryce has a question. What's Wentz's value in terms of picks in a superflex league?
Well, I own him in XFL, so no is the answer. Um, if it's a normal league, 1.6 to 1.9 range ish. I mean, obviously that's all who owns him and what's the situation, and are you able to put this individual in a headlock over it. But if somebody said, "Hey, I flipped him for 1.3 or 1.4 because I'm not a fan of X," okay,
Yeah,
I get it.
I think in a super flex outside of Trevor Lawrence, I think any of those picks you really should be asking for. So 1, 2 on. I don't. Maybe it's the fact that I think Lawrence has a nice career ahead of him as long as Jacksonville doesn't ruin him. So I would rather sit on Lawrence than take a shot on Wentz, although typically I would tell you go with the proven commodity. I'm very intrigued by what Lawrence can do with the NFL. So Bryce, I would say 1-2 on and Superflex should be what you either ask for or offer if you're trying to acquire Wentz. But if you're trying to acquire Wentz in a league where he's owned by uh, Paulie Shore over here, it ain't happening. No,
Not
no
happening.
wheezing the juice. That's your one
Yeah,
movie line per show.
it's hilarious. Somebody offered me the 112, and within 30 seconds declined it, and I didn't send him anything after.
Yeah, I mean, I typically prefer guys to actually respond, but if you're that strong on a player that you're not even interested in the conversation, there isn't anything to say. No,
Well, this is the
oh, go
guy.
ahead.
Yeah, this is the guy who ran himself right into the ground at the position, so I know I can headlock him on it, and that's nowhere near headlock. Beat him up, you know, take their gold and move
Yeah.
on.
You got to know your league.
Price
That's what
tag.
it comes down to. Bryce does say, I need him in another league. I have the 1-7, 1-8, Newton and Bridgewater are my guys. So, you know,
Offer
I'm
him
about
1-8,
to
see
say
what
I would
happens.
take one of those picks and shoot the offer because you're not. It's not like you're out of the realm. Any of the top 10 picks. Depending
Sure.
on what the guy has, depending on what he's looking for, I would feel comfortable throwing that out there. I mean, it wouldn't be an offensive trade offer. You'll probably get a counter, I would think. Especially if it's super flex. But uh, and I'm impressed with our boy Craig. Somehow he's both in the YouTube and Facebook chat at the moment. I am unhappy because you're not on here, Craig. You need to be on the show so that you can rib live on air. So that is
If
Carson Wentz side of it. What about the Jalen Hurts side of things?
I wasn't a fan of him at Bama, I'm not a fan of him at Oklahoma. I think you have the perfect combo of youth, upside, age, and the fact that he's the QB one that you can sell. Um, the one thing he does have is legs, and everyone loves that in fantasy. With him and with someone else that I'm not going to select high, I'm just not a fan of that. Um, I think you can reasonably expect a mid to high first, and I would be selling in Superflex.
Yeah, the interesting thing with Hurts is I've seen growth over the last year or two when it comes to accuracy, decision making, things like that. But he just doesn't work well within structure. He really does have to get out of the pocket, and sometimes he does that to a
Improvise.
fault, and it's very frustrating. I don't know how well he's going to fit with this new scheme. I don't. I just don't like the way Philadelphia is going as a team. So if I had any Hurt shares, I'd be looking to move them while it's hot. Right now he's the de facto QB1. Draft hasn't happened. I think you have like a 2 month window where if you don't like him, it's time to go. Like you find a trade partner and you move him. Now don't go Philly. Don't go showing your hand and selling him for cheap. But if you can get anything in the first round, I would be pretty happy with that. Anywhere around you know 8 to 12. I mean, it's going to be tough to get a buyer, but oh yeah,
I would
chat
be a
doesn't like him either.
seller, and yeah, I don't see who. I mean, Rager, I'm a fan of, but it's almost I'm a fan of you because you're worth a early to mid second. I'm not a huge fan of his. Um, I don't see them having Uber help to where he just magically figures it out. It reminds me a lot of the lock situation where you can sell the hype and at the end of it just go, yeah, you're off my team, and it doesn't really matter if I sold low because you see what happened.
Yeah, if he could develop a pocket game, staying inside the pocket, learning how to move within the pocket, and not just needing that kind of chaos to be successful. Like Hurts has the athletic profile. He's got a big enough arm. He can make most of the throws perfectly fine. I just don't like that he seems like he has to scramble and has to get out to make plays happen. And, that just gives them too many opportunities to make poor decisions, throw bad balls into bad cover. I mean, it's just, I would rather put my chip on, any of the top three quarterbacks in this class over a guy like Hurts. So if you can get me one of those guys, I take a shot there, or something like that. Like I'm just not comfortable keeping Hurts long term, and I don't like what Philly's doing. So there you go, people. Those are your two what to do with these two guys that just got traded this week. The one question I will be interested to see how it turns out in the next few years is who's made the better decision, the Colts or the Rams? Because the Rams gave up a truckload to get a quarterback that's near and dear to my heart, obviously. I mean, he's been my quarterback for 12 years. He's tough as nails, very strong arm, very smart quarterback. But I feel like they way overspent to go get him, where the Colts really didn't have to spend nearly as much to get a guy who, okay, you're going to get some games where it looks like he doesn't know what's going on, like he makes just some crazy decisions, but you're also going to get some very strong games out of Wentz. It's the Ryan Fitzpatrick syndrome almost. You're going to get games where he just torches the team, and they're going to get games like, is this guy really a quarterback? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the next few years.
I can't say it's overly shocking, but you know who looks really smart right now? It's the Saints. They're not going to spend squat. They're going to get the same level out of Jameis, and they didn't spend literally anything.
Well, we still don't know if Breeze is retired yet, right? He still hasn't made a decision.
Yeah. He accepted the veterans minimum. He's said so. I mean, you don't sit there and go, "Hey, my salary's $30 million and now it's $1 million," because you can't legally pay less. He's hanging them up. But I mean, the Saints are going to get this same 1 to 3 year look at somebody for free. The Colts are spending a first. The Rams are spending multiple firsts for an older one. And I mean, it's not as smart as the Lions who are going to sit here and go, hey, I get multiple firsts and I get a reset on the age without being really forced in on salary. But I mean, the Saints are looking really smart. They probably have the best situation, and they're not going to spend anything for it.
Chat's on fire tonight. They're coming at you strong, Paul. Taysom is starting over crab legs. That's what the chat's saying. Just putting that out there. You're FSU boy. They don't like it. Not at all.
Wow, it's almost like I'm wearing a hat or something of some school or something.
You got a target painted on your forehead.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
All right. So the reason that you're here, the reason you're watching, we are talking SuperFlex rookie mocks tonight. So I want to get through some news and notes because that's some important stuff, some big moves in fantasy. But it's gonna be pretty straightforward. I will tell you, for those at home that are either new to SuperFlex or you watch this and you haven't been doing SuperFlex for a long time, quarterbacks are always going to go higher up. I can't imagine some of the quarterbacks are going to go super high in ours because I know how Paul feels about at least one Buckeye. And currently, the way my board is laid out, I'm putting the guys that are sure things at the top. So my top three are a quarterback, a running back, a receiver. It looks a little different, but just know that as we move on, this is going to change. I mean, we're in February. For those that are watching it live or within the next few days, this is February. We're still evaluating. As you can tell, when you go to rookiedraftguide.com, we're putting guys on constantly because we're still going through the process. We're watching tape. We're putting together our boards. We're having some fun tonight and doing it as we go, but this is going to be different in a month when we redo this. So that being said, quarterbacks always go early in Superflex. I'm just not doing that this time because I'm not comfortable that some of these quarterbacks are sure things like, Jamar Chase or some of these other guys. So that being said, we're going to just kick it off, Paul. I'm going to go with the softball because it's pick one. Everybody knows it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. It just is what it is. And then I'll give you pick two so that then we can get going with the real conversation. I will say that Trevor Lawrence's shoulder surgery went well. It sounds like he's good to go for training camp. He'll be healthy and ready to rock. And I watched his very scripted pro day, and I don't really know why I did. I mean, it doesn't change anything. Looks good. Threw the ball well. Does everything you want. Um, it's just hard to knock the guy. He's such a clean prospect coming out. He's been successful for, feels like 10 years. I mean, people have been waiting for him to come in and be the guy. So there really isn't much to add. I mean, just it is what it is. I mean, he's number one in everybody's book, and if he isn't number one, then you're lying to yourself. Zach Wilson is not the number one QB in this draft. It just isn't going to be that way. So,
Yes, he is.
why
And with
why is Zach Wilson the number one QB in this draft?
and with the 1-1A selection, I select Zach Wilson. I think that I'm not a fan of Meyer. Ultimately, I will say Fabio is the first selection just because someone will pay you for it so that you can move and pick Wilson second. But I would select Wilson first. And I know that 5 individuals fell over thinking about that. Last time someone from Provo, did some weird stuff, 5 people fell over.
There it is.
And that is an Arthur Bishop reference. You get one per show.
So Matt in our chat doesn't disagree. He doesn't think Trevor's actually that good. Poor completion percentage and passer ratings against ACC competition. But on the other hand, you've now made him laugh by saying Wilson number 2. He's saying Fields, Chase, Harris.
Yeah.
This kind of shows you what your drafts are going to be like this year. Because look at, even at the very top, there's just people that have differing opinions. And severely different. I mean, there's just, 3 of us already disagreeing. And, the chat is full and lively tonight. But, I mean, it's going to be an interesting draft season. Even the NFL draft, I think, is going to be really interesting. Where does Chase go in the big scheme of things because he opted out, in the NFL draft? I don't see it changing in fantasy drafts. He's still your number 1 wide receiver, but I've heard guys say, well, what about, some of these other top guys, the Devonta Smiths and Waddles of the world. I mean, Chase is the most complete receiver, but people are, just like with Trevor Lawrence being the most complete quarterback, I mean, people still have concerns. You're not interested in him with Zach Wilson, which works for you because in our league, you're going to get to draft Zach Wilson at the 101, and I've already got Trevor Lawrence, so we'll see in the end who made the right decision.
Which league is that?
XFL, the Bryce special.
Oh, I don't select first.
Oh, you don't have the 1-1? I thought you had the 1-1.
I made the playoffs.
Oh, but I thought you somehow had the 1-1 from somebody. I didn't think it was. Fields is not. Oh, Fields is not an NFL quarterback. Ooh. So at the 2, you went Zach Wilson. So we went quarterback. I will then obviously have to take Jamar Chase because I'm not taking Justin Fields. I'm very concerned. Much like a guy like. I'm not going to do a comp. I'm very concerned with the way Fields. It seems like he has to do a lot of that moving and getting out of the pocket to really make some things happen. I would like to see him, kind of stick around in the pocket a little bit more and not be so quick to try to get out and make some things happen. Ohio State is a strong team all around, and I just have some concerns there. I think he makes every throw you need him to make. I think he's probably going to be a top 3 or 4 quarterback in this NFL draft, but he's not my 3rd quarterback. I'm just not as big a fan of him, and I know you're not a big fan of him. But feel free to add your thoughts on Fields.
I was gonna say I thought you selected.
I took Chase, but there's nothing
Fields.
to say about Chase. It's more why we're not taking Fields. Like Chase is a very elite wide receiver. He does everything you want him to. And he didn't have to play last year. Him opting out just kept him healthy. He went down to XOS Performance to just start getting ready for the draft, and he's been down there working. I mean, If you look at that, for those that don't know what XOS is, it's just a performance center where guys go that are draft prospects, and I think they had something like 30 to 40% of the guys that they've trained for the NFL draft made it as like first and second round picks or something crazy. I mean, XOS Performance is very good at prepping kids for NFL draft and getting them ready for what they need to do. So, Jamar Chase has been down there this whole time working, and he looks, all the little clips I've seen, he looks to be in impeccable shape.
Yeah, I'm behind it on he's the 1-1
Oh, yeah.
non-super flex. All right, so I pick fourth here, huh? Um, Someone is going to be super interested in Trey Lance, and he's just more accurate than Justin Fields. He just is. And he doesn't have to sit there for half a millennium to make a decision and throw the ball. Trey Lance, he's going to go probably top 10 in the NFL, and he'll be locked in a starting position, and this is a super flex mock, so I'll take him fourth. The individual who usually selects fourth usually owns their first, and they're looking more to bottom out versus head back up. So, and Lance, he provides you with that first year where he's going to likely sit. So he can actually help the team that selects him select first or second next year. So,
Yeah.
Trey
I mean,
Lance.
so I would anticipate that Trey, of all the quarterbacks in this draft, at least that are going to be first round draft picks, he's probably going to be the one that sits his first year. I could easily see him go to like an Atlanta or somewhere where they just let him ride the pine. Uh, that's just kind of what my gut feeling is, which I think will be good for him. I think he does need a little bit of time to continue to develop, but he is he's got all the tools you want to see out of the quarterback position. So I don't hate him going as the number three quarterback in this, because it really, once you get past Lawrence and Wilson, it's kind of a pick your flavor. Which one do you like? The toolsy guy that can do everything that may need some more development. The guy who's been a big name in college but may not be a very good NFL guy. The guy from Bama who is a great system quarterback who, as long as he goes to the Patriots, should be fantasy relevant. It's kind of pick your poison. So I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. Okay, so obviously, next guy for me would be Najee Harris. I know that you are not a fan of Harris. Um, when I look at the next group of guys, I think at this point you're looking at probably the top running back, and I'm fairly confident he's the top running back in the class. I think when we get to the draft, I think Javonte Williams will push people and their perspective on him because he's been pushing mine. I mean, coming into this draft season, Javonte Williams was a guy that I wasn't thinking at as my number three running back, and now I'm thinking him as my number one running back. I'm just not there yet. I think Najee Harris can do it all, and I think as long as he goes to a good spot, he should easily be the top running back in the class. But in a month or two, I could look back and go, oh, it was really Javonte the whole time, and I was just fooling myself. Just putting that out there now so it's recorded for the world to know.
And I'm going to follow up on that. And with the sixth selection, I'm going to take Javonte Williams. He's basically Le'Veon, with the size, the footwork, and the hands. He doesn't have elite speed, but certainly functional.
And you don't have to worry about the rap career. No, I'm just saying you don't have to worry about that because Le'Veon Bell seemed to worry too much about his rap career instead of football.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, him. How do you think that Ben felt sitting there watching him and AB play for the ship, and he wasn't either throwing to one or handing off the other one? How hammered was he sitting at home?
He probably, well, I don't. I'm always interested to see if NFL players really care all that much, like if they're watching big games like that or if they're just moving on through life. I mean, I got to think that it hurts. You made it to the playoffs, you get, you know, just lambasted by the Cleveland Browns. I mean, he probably doesn't want to think about football, right?
Yeah, and then he soaked himself. He soaked his tears up with just wads of hundreds. And then he woke
Yeah,
up
the
the next
thing,
morning and felt
the,
fine.
the thing
Hungover,
I love
fine.
about Javonte Williams is, he's got the perfect size, 5'10", just over 200 pounds. I think he's like close to 220. But he really could be. He's not scheme dependent. I could see him be fine in a zone fit. I could see him in doing some power stuff. Like he really does have the ability to play in any scheme. So I'm really excited about Williams. But I think Najee Harris brings some intriguing abilities as well. As I watched a little bit more of the season went on, and as I watched some of the more recent games, even up to the national championship. I mean, he doesn't stop fighting. He seems there's times where I almost think he's a little bit more athletic than like a Derrick Henry, some of the guys that went before him at Bama. I don't have a lot of concern about the way he catches the ball. I think he can do some stuff out of the backfield catching the ball. I mean, I like both of the backs, but I just feel like Javonte at the end of it may be my favorite back in the class. But there's a lot of really nice running backs in this class. Like I like Etienne. I know that everybody's been big on him for a while. Michael Carter is a little undersized for me, but I think how is it that North Carolina has two running backs that you could consider, in the top 5 to 7 backs in this draft class? Like where'd that come from? I didn't even see that coming. Gainwell, Jamar Jefferson,
Well,
Hill, Kylan Hill. I mean, looking at my list of running backs, I like so many of these guys.
well, that happens because you have certain schools in the ACC and certain coaches who don't know their stuff.
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
That's how that happens. Thank you, Willie Taggart.
All right. So uh,
I'm glad that I donated to the buyout fund to him.
yeah, the terrible coach. All right. So at this point, I'm going to skip over Justin Fields still, and I'm going to go Devonta Smith. I know that Smith's a little undersized, but I really like the player. I think he can be successful. He can be on the outside. He can be on the inside. He can do a lot of different things. Good route runner. So I would go with him, and I'd feel pretty happy because when you're drafting in these top 5 to 7 picks, you still need to make sure your core is in order, and you go with the sure things. And Fields for me just isn't a sure thing at this price point.
Yeah, he's got a solid floor. I wouldn't be making this selection, but if you're still unsure, if you're someone who picks,
Hmm.
what is this, 7? If you're someone who selects traded in for this and you're looking for it and you selected one of the big 3, then you don't need to take here. Okay, I'm fine with this. I wouldn't be making the pick. I like Waddle more, but whatever. Um, so I'm up at 8 here.
Hmm.
I will go Kyle
Mm.
Pitts out of Florida. Um, again, if you're picking 8th, you probably traded for it, and you're probably not making the playoffs. If you made the playoffs and you own 8, this wouldn't be your selection. But I can't see him falling much further. Also, with the fact that a lot of these superflex are becoming superflex TE leagues, he might be higher than this in that format. Actually, he should be, but um,
Yeah, tight end
just
premium, he's probably in the top 5, I would guess.
yeah, yeah. Um, just known floor at a position where you don't have many.
Well, just to think, I mean, this dude was a quarterback not too long ago. I mean, he converted from quarterback to tight end, and he could easily be one of the better wide receivers in the class if he decide, if he was a wide receiver. I mean, he's, was he 6'5", like 230, 240. He can play in line, he can play in the slot, he can do all the things you want him to do. So it's like this is as sure a thing at tight end as I've seen in the draft in quite a few years. I mean, think of guys like Kittle and Kelsey, and some of them, they didn't come out with as much hype as a guy like Pitts would. I mean, everybody knew who those guys were, but I mean, Pitts is coming out. People are talking about him as a top 15 pick in the NFL draft.
Yeah. Also, if you're not going to end up with one of the big 3.5 this year, you might be waiting a couple years, because it's basically these three and then Eric Gilbert. So,
oh, good.
You better select them.
Matt's got a
now.
good question while we're talking Pitts. So, would it be stupid to draft Pitts even if you already own Darren Waller? And I would say no.
No,
Waller's what, 29?
Well, your tight ends, you're not going to have immediate help out of them. So maybe you select it. Everyone thinks, oh, you have to sell one. Then you wait for week 7, and then you sell Waller. I mean, if you're in the hunt, you hold him. But if you're out of it, that could be forced out of someone else. If someone's 6-1, but they have a nothing at the position, okay, I want your first and second. If it's SuperFlex, first, second, and third. I mean, whatever.
Right. Waller's
however you make it happen. Yeah.
I mean, it gives you, so either way, it gives you depth at a position that is tight. I mean, tight end does not have a lot of really great players. So if you've got two of the top, if you look back in a year or two, probably two of what will be the top 10 to 12 tight ends in fantasy, there's such a variance after you get past a certain amount in the tight end world. I mean, I can think of 4 or 5 elite tight ends right now. I mean, probably not even that. Kittle, Kelsey, Waller.
And he's got a shot. He's got a shot at being a true difference maker. And that's where I do like Jordan, and I would rather have him 4, 5, 6, 8 selections behind this. But others are going to like Pitts a lot, and I'll somewhat stick to this is what should happen versus what I would do.
Well, and I try to do these as much of the, that's why I preface this by saying quarterbacks are going to go way earlier. It's probably not going to happen with what we're doing, but in most cases they'll go earlier. The elite players tend to move themselves up the board and go quick, except when you get to the quarterback position. I mean, in theory, when we get to the draft, if Mac Jones really does go to a team like the Patriots or someone where he's in a system and able to be that guy, he's going to push himself into the first round. And I'm not comfortable taking him. I mean, like players like that will push themselves in the first round where you're going to get quality guys like a Brevin Jordan or Freiermuth or some of these, other really nice options are going to slide, which is perfectly fine. But, I don't want you to be surprised going into your drafts with that being the case. Quarterbacks always push themselves up. It just is what it is. And Matt, your question about concerns with Pitt's blocking, he's not going to be needed to block in most cases. Teams typically try to have that blocking tight end on the roster, and they try to have that move tight end, that one that can play out in the slot and do some of those more receiver route running type things. So I wouldn't be concerned about it because teams aren't drafting him expecting that. You're not going after Pitts or Jordan. Probably not even Freiermuth. You're probably not going at any of those three saying, "Oh, this is our blocking tight end." And if so, I wouldn't want him for fantasy anyway. Any thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, I'm just not concerned. He's basically Evan Ingram, but you reset the last 3 seasons of meh out of him. Um, you just have a top athlete at a position where you don't have many. I'll gladly take that shot. Like I said, if this is a playoff roster, you're going to be selecting someone else. You're going to be selecting Waddle or something. But if you are between 6 to 9 and you don't, and this isn't your own first, if he doesn't hit the first year to year and a half, so what? It actually helps you.
Yeah.
So Pitts is my selection, and I'm not really thinking about it if I own somebody else's first in this spot.
For sure. Fields is still sitting there, but man, I just don't like him. I just don't. I don't really care for him. What's that?
Where are we
This is
at?
the 9
Where are
spot.
we
Yeah, we're
at?
at the 9 spot.
9 or something?
I mean, I'm gonna go Justin Fields, but I'm just not super comfortable with it. Uh, he's gonna be a first round quarterback in the NFL draft. He'll be a first round quarterback in fantasy. You know, he just there's just so many things that concern me about him. You know, I think he really needs to be in something that's more um, not necessarily air raid, but it needs to be in more of a spread offense. It has to be catered to allowing him to get out of the pocket, try to make some things happen on the run, and you know, I don't know. I'm not sold on him being a franchise quarterback. And with that being said, I'm not sold on him being a franchise fantasy quarterback either. But at this point, you're going to start getting into guys that you have, you know, like Travis Etienne's the only big name running back left that people are fairly confident on him. That he's going to be a sure thing, and then you're getting into other players like the Jalen Waddles and Seth Williams, and some that people love, some that people are meh on. So I'll take Fields, but
You know how I feel. I feel that he's a second or third round selection in the actual
he'll
NFL,
be in the
so
top 10, I'm sure.
I'm sure he will be. I wouldn't make that selection. He's going to get some coaches fired either from his own franchise or from someone who is then in that division who suddenly is behind him, and they're going to want to fire who they have. He's going to get somebody fired. I believe it's going to be the team who selects him, but he'll get somebody fired.
Yeah,
So what?
it's hard to tell what his career is going to look like. He's got all the tools to develop. I just don't know that, you know. Hopefully, he gets with a team that can develop him. I mean, you know, I never wish for anybody to have a crappy career that gets drafted in the top 10. So I hope that a team will draft him and develop him because he can make all the throws. You saw him. The thing that I do like about him, you know, I don't want to just crap on him all the time. I think the kid is very tough. You know, watching him just get pounded and then get up and keep fighting is it's an admirable thing to do. I think he played hard even when he was hurt. I'm not sold on him. Joss. Our boy Josh has got some good stuff here. All right, so guessing there will be more late round surprises and undrafted contributions this year, with many players missing out on playing this year. Any way to get more of a feel for this? All right, Paul's
Yes,
got your answer, Jaws. So let's sit back and listen to Paul Theater.
if it's if it's a super flex league, box in the top 12 to 14 selections, and then just take a bunch of fourths and fifths. If you're playing non super flex, probably have a hard line around like the first round and just sell your seconds and your thirds and let somebody else handle that maybe section. That's how I would handle it because I want extra shots at the fourth round just with the nobodies that might hit. And if you move up, then you should in theory have more shots at the first. I mean, these guys who we feel more solid about, if you pick let's say fourth, you have the 1-4 2-4, 3-4, and 4-4. Move that second rounder up, and you're offering me a fourth or a fifth back behind it this year? Fine. Excellent. You want my second next year and 2-4 for the 1-9 selection and a fourth? Sold. Just get as many shots in on the ones you feel good about. Move on from the maybes.
Well,
If the maybes hit, so be it. I just don't want that shot.
well, and I'm really so to Jaws's question. I think the conversation goes to what are you looking for to be kind of a late round sleeper. Now, so when we're starting to think about the way the NFL works, look at the guys who have a quicker line to playing time. So let's say Houston in the fifth, sixth, seventh round drafts a running back. I would take a shot thinking that guy's probably only got one person to get over to get playing time, and that one person ahead of him's injured regularly, getting older, whatever the case may be. Maybe you take a shot there, you stash him because, hey, he's got a chance to, people are going to be looking for the next James Robinson, is really what's going to happen. And especially in this draft, there's probably potential for multiple types of James Robinson players that get drafted late or undrafted that sneak up into playing time. Now, they're probably not going to wind up being top 10 fantasy running backs like Robinson turned into be, but look for teams that you see a quick line to playing time. So, Detroit. Detroit has like no wide receivers that are coming back this year except for Quintez Cephas. Right now nobody's under contract. So if Detroit drafts, a fifth, sixth, seventh rounder, there's some undrafted guys. Maybe you throw a couple of chips on those guys. I think to add on to what you've said, you go with the guys that you know for certain are going to hit top, 10-ish, maybe top 12, depending on how you feel. And then in the fourth, fifth round, you look at who's going to get quick playing time. And then at least that guy has a chance. Now, hopefully you've done your work and you've gone to rookiedraftguide.com and you've checked out all our evals, shameless plug, and you know who we think is going to hit. But, at least you put a chip on a guy who might get you playing time, who might turn into something. That's kind of where my mind sits when you say, how do you find a late round, kind of deeper, undrafted guys, things like that for fantasy purposes? Look for guys who are going to get playing time, potentially.
I actually look at it almost the complete opposite. I want somebody who's got the athletic upside, but they should, in theory, not see the playing time early because you don't know what situation is going to end up opening up. It's always obvious at the end of the season which one opened up. Okay, this is, the wrong injury happened here and here. I'm not going to say that you should select the one who has off the field issues, but if there's someone who fell who shouldn't have, that's your fourth round pick. Whether it works out or not, athletic upside. I am a truther for talent over situation. Just take someone who fell because they went in the fifth round and they're behind this guy, this guy, and this guy. Okay. You're drafting in the fourth. You're not, what'd you expect? Tight ends with athletic upside who you have to sit on for a season and a half. Well, guess what? You selected a tight end. You're going to have to sit on him anyways. So what if the guy in front of him is old? Everybody knocked Komet because they had 800 other tight ends. How foolish does that look right now? Athleticism over known situation. Like you wait for the guy to have an off the field incident between here and the draft, and that's who you pick. I'm not saying that I hope it happens, but it's going to happen. Someone's going to have something, and that's who you pick.
Well, there you go, people. You have two very different sides of the coin. You have talent over situation, and you have situation. I'm not saying over talent, because I think talent has a place in there, but situation if you're looking at late round steals. So, two very differing opinions, two ways to go. I don't really hate either. Matt has a question. If Fields goes to the Panthers or Falcons, are you still not taking him? I'm assuming as a first rounder in the top, 5 to 10, because we both said our displeasure with it. So if he goes to either team,
Well, I mean, I don't think the Falcons are going to have Hayden Hurst anymore, and I don't think that Fields can play a position that's not tight end. So, who knows? He might see the field there.
I so the Falcons are an interesting situation. I mean, he'll go. I'd be more excited about him going to the Falcons because he'll sit behind Matt Ryan, at least for a year or two, and
Yeah.
hopefully that development. I mean, I'd be more willing to take a shot in Superflex, at the back half of the first round on a guy like Fields if he's sitting behind a known guy like Ryan. Panthers, I don't, I like Matt Rule, and I think he's building something interesting there. I'm just not sure if he can develop a quarterback. I've still yet to see that, so that would be a red flag for me still.
I would be concerned. Isn't he from that area? Yeah,
Um,
I would be
yes,
concerned.
he's down that way.
The other thing with Fields, with my bias aside, I I would not want him on the Falcons because I don't want his high school friends hanging out with him.
Mm,
And I know that that
Dwayne
shouldn't
Haskins.
matter. That shouldn't matter.
Yep.
Dwayne Haskins. And I don't think highly enough of him to where that's not a concern for me. He should. I mean, you would think that Matty Ice would be like, yeah, get this idiot out of here. But it's gonna be. I mean,
Hmm.
it's hard for someone to sit there and say, hey,
Right.
kick your friends out. Like, I'd be more concerned with the Falcons than what initially
Yeah.
seems like a
And
fine landing
Bryce says
spot.
the piggyback off Matt. Say Fields drops all the way to the Pats. He imagines the majority of leagues he goes 1-2. What do we think? I is but see, what does Fields do for the Pats that a guy like
If he, where do they
it's in
pick
the
again?
teens, isn't it? Let's see.
If he falls that far, don't you feel that us in the fantasy side of it look and go, if the actual NFL said no, why should I say yes?
Yeah, they pick at 15. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if he falls that far, I can see fantasy owners just being like, "Yep, he's a tight end. I'm
I
off of him." I mean, that's not going to literally happen, but I just have zero faith in
I'd be
Justin
intrigued to
Fields.
find out
None.
why the Patriots took him because he doesn't seem like the type of quarterback that fits what New England wants. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Correct.
There's not many like most of the guys that are fringe first rounders, second rounder quarterbacks seem like the type of quarterbacks that fit the Patriot system. Like if you put Jones or Trask, maybe even Newman, but he needs a lot of development still. Like those type of kind of bigger, taller, strong arm quarterbacks.
Lance.
Lance is a little bit more mobile
Lance.
than I think. The Patriots don't seem to want to do a lot of that. I mean, uh, it seems like they just kind of want a big, statuesque, strong arm, can stay in the pocket and work the pocket, get the ball down the field type guys. I'd be, you know,
Yeah, but you can't look at Mac Jones and look at Lance and go, "Oh, well you can't hold Lance's legs over him because he
right.
has it
True.
everywhere else over Jones." They're not just going to be like, "Hey, I want the worst athlete because my ego gets in the way." No,
Very
that
true.
if if anyone Lawrence not happening, um, Wilson or Lance are sitting there in the middle of the first, yep,
Right.
you can walk that one in.
So there you go, Bryce. We don't think it makes a lot of sense to us. All right, so you're up at the 10, and we're probably only going to get through one round tonight, which is great. Conversations have been awesome. Um, what are you? You're at 10.
Who was
I
the
just took Fields at 9. Yeah, what are you
you
doing?
took Fields? Um, if I own my own first here, I'm gonna easily select Etienne. If I own somebody else's first, I'm gonna select a receiver. I'll go with Etienne just because the position scarcity there. I actually think he's probably the second ranked runner this year. You just don't teach the speed he that he has. Yes, he's got hands issues. His route running is eh. Um, but he has things you don't teach, and he plays a position that you can't easily find. Ultimately, at the end of this, if he lands in the spot where he's that you're smiling about, he goes much higher than this because someone's going to look at the positional scarcity. Um, I'm not huge on him, but I think that the hate for him has went a little far. That being said, there's like another 50 selections before I would select Fields. So, hate's yeah, the hate's a little far. That's okay.
Fields must have killed you in Warzone. Is that what it is? You just hate him because he took you out when you're in the final circle?
My death comms are interesting. I discuss
How he feels
individuals,
about the
and
relatives.
I know that there's a smile out of a BF right now. That's okay.
All right, so
That's
10.
okay.
So I'm 11. I'm going to jump over a guy that you probably would have taken your next wide receiver to take a wide receiver that I know we both like. I'm not taking Jalen Waddle here. I'm going to take Seth Williams from Auburn. I love Seth Williams. He's quickly becoming one of my favorite receivers in this draft. I don't anticipate him going first round in any. Like I could see him being kind of a sneaky back end of the first round guy that produces early. Um, I just think Seth Williams has it. He's got the size, he's got the athletic profile. He can do everything a team wants you to do. So I'm excited about him at the next level, and especially in this wide receiver class. I think he's close to a sure thing as it gets.
If you have your own first here and you're set at the position, reach for the upside. If you if you own someone else's first and you're reaching for the upside, I'll get behind it. Um, if you if you own your own first and you're not set, I'll just select Waddle at 12 because they're neck and neck. Obviously, Waddle's the safer option, but what are you looking for and what do you need? Like I said, if you don't own your own first here and you own someone else's, it's likely because you're not good. And so what? You might be sitting on them for a minute. That's okay. If you if you're selecting in this area and you have a flex need, Waddle's
So
your
the question
selection.
that people are going to have to answer between now and draft time is: are you drafting Henry Ruggs or are you drafting Tyreek Hill? I mean, because that's kind of the group. Like you're either going to get one or the other. Concentration drops, only really big play, or a guy who is an elite wide receiver prospect. And I don't know. I don't know enough to comfortably go. You know what? He's a for sure thing at the next level. But my bias tends to be bigger, taller, still athletically gifted receivers. Like I tend to aim for 6'2" and up receivers most of the time.
Yeah. I think that Waddle's floor is more solid than that, which is why I can make an argument for him if you own your own first. Also, I think in a non-super flex, I think he's going to go 5, 6, 7 range. And just added, I think he'll go higher than this in the end of it. I'm not super high on Waddle, but I would easily select him with just about any first in any non-Superflex and maybe even Superflex.
So then he's your pick 12 then, eh?
You just have the separate. Well,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I said that before. But yeah, it's just if you want the upside and you want the shot at DeAndre Hopkins, Williams, if you want to flex, Waddle. I mean, I think that the short receivers are being more phased in with the NFL with the whole PI. You can't really touch them, and I think that Ruggs is overhated right now. Just because you knew that you were going to have some odd things happen this year, and then it happens, and then you go, "Oh well, told you so." It's like, can you get a mulligan on some of this? Because if it's week 9, Cam Akers is absolutely hated, and then you watch the rest of the season, you're like, "Yep, I'm selecting him in the second or third round of the new leagues for this year." Just because you didn't see it out of Ruggs, I don't think you can hold that over Waddle for being shorter. Like, you, you have to have some patience with some
I
of
love it
these.
in the chat. They're saying Bateman before Waddle.
If you want the upside, yes, I'll get behind that one 100%. I actually missed him. He'd be my
Bateman and
next
Rondale Moore
selection.
are two guys that I think will be interesting to see how the draft season treats them. You know, Rondale Moore was one of those elite athletes that had a freak injury mess up one season, you know, where everyone thought it was like an ACL and wound up being a hamstring or whatever. But his burst, you know, I think his break, like if you look at his breakout age was like 18 or something crazy. I mean, just all sorts of analytics are pointing towards Rondale Moore being just this immense talent. But we just haven't seen a lot out of him because of injuries, and then he decided to kind of opt out. So I think him and Bateman will be two that really will be interesting to see how draft season changes their people's perspective of them both.
One of the things that had him so high after the freshman year was the fact that he just torched Ohio State. But if you look at it, he beat Shaun Wade a lot, and Shaun Wade's not that good. And he was only a sophomore in that. I think he can I think he's maybe a second or third rounder, and you had all the elements for him to get all the throws. I don't think that the height of Rondale Moore should have been there anyways. And I think you're seeing it with Moore having him as a early mid-second in Dynasty formats right now. So
Jaws, our boy Jaws, coming in with the good jokes. Rondale Moore and Waddle would need to join forces in the same trench coat to get onto amusement park rides. It's quality right there.
I can't say anything. I'm short.
I am giant. Uh, so round one is in the books. I will guarantee you it'll look different the next time we do this. Come back next week. We are going to jump into a 1 QB mock and get you going. I know we didn't get to talk any IDP, but I will say that in round 2 of a Superflex rookie draft, if it's an IDP league, you will see Micah Parsons and potentially Nick Bolton in there. Come back to the Monday show and
Yep.
you'll hear us talk about those players and you'll know what position they play and who they are if you don't know who they are. And that's it for tonight. We appreciate the chat coming out and being live. You guys are amazing as always. Jaws and Matt and Bryce and Jason and Craig and Connor and Corey and all the folks that are here hanging out with us. We love you guys. We appreciate the time. Paul, thank you as always for coming and disagreeing with me. It's always nice to have the back and forth. And we will talk to you guys again Monday night with our IDP show. And have a good rest of your weekend. Stay safe out there. Stay warm, and we'll see you soon.
Have a good one, guys.